My name is Viola van Kramon. I'm a member of the European Parliament for the group Greens EFA. We are meeting tonight here, and I warmly welcome you from the European Parliament in Strasbourg on the occasion of what actually means the war in Ukraine, the Russian invasion on Ukraine for the agriculture international markets, and also what does it mean for the EU, what needs to be considered, maybe also to reconsider in terms of European Union agriculture policy. I'm extremely delighted to have four very well-known speakers on that topic. So let me quickly introduce, for now, three of them. One will join us a little bit later. He is still in Ukraine, and this is a little bit difficult then to find the time to join in an online webinar. So we have on this call Oleg Nivievskyi. He is a well-known agriculture economist and the vice president of the economic education School of Economics in Kiev. And he has a very long experience in applied research on agriculture markets and policies. He has made his PhD, his doctor degree in Göttingen at the university, but he has also supported for the European Commission and also had contract with the German Ministry for Agriculture and many other international institutions as well. The second I would like to introduce here is Dr. Bettina Rudloff. We studied together quite a while ago at the Bonn University. Hello, Alex. I will introduce you in a second. Bettina is also an agriculture economist. She works now as a senior associate at the German Institute for International and Security Affairs, what we call in German the SWP, already since 2008. And she's currently there, the director for research, EU and Europe. Her main fields and expertise includes agriculture policy, global nutrition, and EU foreign trade policy. We had always stayed in contact for quite some time, and it's very helpful to have somebody like Bettina sitting in Berlin and having a, let's say, a broader overview of many topics, but especially in trade. And we also spoke about in the Corona crisis, what does it mean when it comes to shortages on certain sectors and so on. So the third one now could join us. Thank you so much, Alex, that you made it possible. Alexei Lissitsa is now the founder of the Ukrainian Agribusiness Club, but he also runs quite a large agriculture, I would say, enterprise in Ukraine. We have met several times also on the occasion what's going on in the Ukrainian agriculture. He is, for now and for today, our practical guy on the ground. He's still in Ukraine, and we are very much looking forward then to share your experience. What's going on right now in Ukraine? How does it look like? What is the main impacts you have to deal with? And one of the initiator of this tonight's webinar is Professor Sebastian Lakner. He is now the head of the chair for agriculture economics at the University of Rostock. He also has had his degree, his PhD degree in Göttingen, and he is well known for all kinds of assessment and lectures and publications on EU common agriculture policy, but also in terms of impacts for extensive and ecological agriculture. So we put together quite a bunch of very well-known experts. We have all followed the terrible first days of the war, but while this is a tragic situation for the people alone in Ukraine, and Oleg and Alex will share their experience, we also see, also in the short run already, the impacts on the international food markets, on the international agriculture markets, and that is worrying many more people. What does it mean for especially those countries with an extremely low income, with a high percentage of imported goods and grain and other products? With this, I would like to give the floor first of all to Oleg at that moment to give us an introduction of 8 or 10 minutes on how does it look like in Ukraine and what is your projection for the next month to come. What does it mean if the Ukrainian harvest cannot even harvest it or not be reprocessed or not maybe exported? Whatever does that mean for the Ukrainian domestic market, but also globally? Oleg, please.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Viola, Sebastian, colleagues, for organizing this very important event, because I think that this is really critical to discuss this and to raise the awareness about what's going on in Ukraine. Because indeed, the war in Ukraine that Russia started is not just about Ukraine, it's about the whole civilized world that has already and will have repercussions across the world. So what's happening in Ukraine right now, so the war is unfolding, and we see many interesting activities going on from at least from Russia. When it as far as my institution, for instance, is concerned, we kind of stopped our operation. So we left the building, KSE, Kyiv School of Economics building in Kyiv, and everybody was reallocated. Majority stayed in Ukraine. Some left Ukraine. Luckily, we had all students evacuated from the intense areas of fighting. Just today, I got a message that one of our students, the last student, left Vorzel. This is close to Kyiv, and because we were very worried because we couldn't really get her on content for a couple of days. There were no connection and no news whatsoever. So then through Instagram, through Facebook, from her colleagues, we could get her. And unfortunately, she left that city. So we are all online and trying to help the country as much as possible on the kind of intellectual level, on the cultural level, and with analysis, with these webinars, with other online activities, setting up new contacts. When it comes to agriculture, indeed, the situation now looks quite critical, I would say. Not that much critical, but I think it's going to have some critical implications for the world and for Ukraine in particular, because what we see now is that when it comes to winter crops, for instance, the situation here, maybe Alex can tell more later about that, but it looks like the situation more or less okay, but the problem is really with the spring crops, and the expectations are quite negative, I guess. So and the same is about Russia, because who knows what's happened. The effect of sanctions on Russia will be, well, at least I expect, will be quite detrimental in terms of the future expected output and yields, because of the limited access to international technologies, to the international seeds and new seeds variety. So that's gonna, so the future output is sort of will be quite unavoidable. So what that means for the entire expectation and outlook is that reduced exports from Ukraine and from Russia, and maybe in the worst case scenario, so we can expect zero exports from Ukraine and Russia, and that's going to have not just kind of short-term impact, but it's going to last for a couple of years, because the infrastructure in Ukraine is quite destroyed at the moment. We had some preliminary calculation at Kyiv School of Economics trying to assess the current already economic losses that we endure. So what we expect that the GDP will fall by half already. The infrastructure is quite damaged, so the estimated costs of the damaged infrastructure is about, let me guess, something like 500 billion already dollars. So that's quite substantial amount of money. And and of course people's lives. I mean, we have more than 1,000 civilians already dead. And this is really, yesterday I've heard that 2 million people left the country, 2 million people, and the UN kind of estimated that this bill could also go up until 5 million people, so quite substantial amount. And so the costs are already quite high for Ukraine. And food security situation in Ukraine is kind of heterogeneous across Ukraine. Alex knows more about that because he's currently dealing with that, but it's sort of in some regions this is really kind of close to catastrophic, I would say, situation, especially in those cities where the actual fightings are going on. So, but that's going to have kind of repercussions. I mean, the reduced expected exports and output from Ukraine, that's going to have impact on other countries, especially low-income countries like Middle East, Northern Africa, where that depend on our wheat and corn quite substantially. Ukraine and Russia together, they export about 30% of total wheat, global wheat trade in that we have right now. 30%, quite substantial amount. And if this export cease to exist from this from our countries, I mean, I don't see that there's going to be compensation of these amounts from other countries and from other places in the world easily. Okay, that's going to have some time, and there's no. It would be interesting where these additional amounts could be taken, and so that means these countries will suffer. Okay, and in terms of future perspective, that's also can have negative impact on the even some say that even kind of hunger riots could happen over there, and that's also again the problem could be converted in additional displaced persons and then immigration, and that's also a problem with security, not just in those countries but in the Western Europe. So overall, I guess aside from pure security reasons, that's really a key problem right now, not just for Ukraine but for other countries across the world, and that's really about the civilized world. And also I'd like to kind of finish my introductory. What also worries me a lot that I came across just today in the morning, I've read kind of address of rectors of universities in Russia, that quite a long list of rectors of universities that supported openly what Putin is doing in Ukraine. And for me it was really kind of a blow. I mean, quite expected, but still, I mean, such an open address and such a open support to Putin, and these are the intellectuals of the country, right? So they sort of supported that, and that's also probably another dimension that we all have to look at it. So this how the intellectuals in Russia are doing. Okay, so the environment that is that, because I mean, Russia, so the war will stop sooner or later, okay? But the people, especially the people in academia, will stay, and the discussion with them is also needed in order to to change the minds, or to open up what's their problems, and to to convey and discuss the way they are thinking about the world. That's also quite, I mean, to me, this is really worrying episode that I read today. So that's all from my side. Over to you, Joel.
No, thank you so much. I mean, what you said at the end, the might be enforced support for Putin can be also orchestrated by the state. I mean, I know that my husband wrote to his colleagues and really wrote a very harsh email, and he got a one line back: "We are terrified to death. We do what we can." So that means that not all the intellectuals are on Putin's side, but they simply have no idea how to express their resistance, maybe openly. And maybe you know how that works. You know the KGB, FSB methods, how they put pressure. But nevertheless, it is rather shocking to hear that they all follow this line, and there's nobody standing up against Putin. So Alex, will you share a little bit of what's going on and what you normally do before the war, and maybe how your life has changed since the 24th of February, and how you see the short and midterm perspective on your farm? Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Viola. Yeah, you know, on 24th, actually, I have had a big plan to go to vacation. So my flight should be at 8 o'clock in the morning on 24th. So at 5 o'clock, I was awakened because not of the trip, but because of the bombs which were close to Kiev and Borispil airport as well. So that means usually in agriculture, we have not that much time to have fun like holidays. Usually we have January and February, because in the beginning of March, we start to cultivate, to fertilize the soils, etc., etc. And that's because of, that's because of that time of the year. Many Ukrainian farmers usually go abroad or stay somewhere else for holidays. A lot of my colleagues stay right now in Egypt, by the way, because they cannot come back. So they have booked their holidays in Egypt. And every year, my company, which is operating roughly 120,000 hectares of land in the North Ukraine, Chernihiv, Sumy, roughly 100,000 hectares and 22,000 hectares in Poltava region. So Sumy and Chernihiv, where exactly right now the fights are. And we do send our tractor drivers to Egypt every year. So 60 tractor drivers, they came on 23rd of February back from Egypt. And that's good, because I don't know actually what can happen with tractor drivers without families, etc., staying in Egypt. So that's the situation where we are. Where we, what we actually have done before the war. We have had fun, and right now there's completely different reality, and the reality is, of course, different from region to region. In my regions, where do I work? And I was born in the North Ukraine, very close to Russia. 30 kilometers from Russian border, and my family is partly Russian as well, Russian speaking. My family is partly also located in St. Petersburg. We do not speak to each other right now, but the region Chernihiv, the region Sumy, they were actually very friendly to Russians. And every year I do have a kind of survey among the people living in the rural areas. And actually, the survey was like, what do you think about the company? How socially, how efficient is actually the social program of the company, etc., etc. Among other, we have asked also about the conflict in eastern part of the country, about Russian. Say more than 70% of our people living in those regions were Russia friendly. Right now, 95% are against Russians. And that's exactly what happened over the last 2 weeks. The brutality of Russians in the border regions was not, it was not expected, that was even not thinkable. My mom, which is 82, living across to very not far away from Russian border, and she is saying to me every day the same thing. I couldn't imagine that I will, with 82, see that my brothers from Russia will attack with brutality our people. What means brutality? Of course, you see on TV the pictures from Mariupol, you see the pictures from Kharkiv, from different types of the cities. But right now in the villages in Chernigiv, in Sumy, the Russians go through the village and shoot down everything what they see with Kalashnikov. So you can imagine that all the windows are broken in the villages. They go to the shops, they go to the hospitals, they shoot down everything what they see. And that's exactly the disaster. That's exactly the disaster for people which are living there. And nobody knows exactly how many died. And my job right now is between 5 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock in the morning, just to call my managers and ask one question: are you alive or not? I do not speak about the animals, because I have 1,000 animals, the dairy farm, which is not far away from the Belarus, so 30 kilometers away. They will die. My animals, high productive dairy stock, will die because there is not fodder supply, there is no veterinary medicine, the village is occupied by Russians, nobody can in, nobody can out. So the animals, they get something to eat, no electricity, by the way. So the people from all village, they come just to milk the cows, because they are also afraid, and they love the animals, and the farm is one of the modernest in the country. And that's the life that we do live right now. So how can I describe that? 1 hour ago, I've got the picture from Chernigiv city, my home city, where actually I have got a silos with 120,000 tons of capacity, storage capacity, two bombs directly in the silos. So there was a big fire. God thanks, they have tried to do something. And the second bomb was directly in the silos. I don't know what's going to happen overnight. Do I have the silos in Chernigiv or not? Do I have the farm? Do I have the people? And every day I do cry. I do cry, really. I'm not that sensible guy, because I grew up in a village. I know what actually to do. But I do cry every day because of their brutality, because of that war, which actually caused by Russian president and Russian people supported. Honestly say, they're supported by Russian people. So, and that's exactly what I do every day. My everyday job is not to count my losses, not to calculate what to do, just to say and ask my people to motivate them to survive. It's not an easy job, believe me.
No, that's what we fully understand. And I mean, we are all, I was in tears from the very beginning, and I can't really express what I feel and how I feel with you. I mean, working in Ukraine since '96 and knowing so many people get all the messages, do this, do that, we need help here. And you see, I mean, these are reasonable people. We had last night, or we still have a delegation from the Ukrainian Rada, female colleagues, because males are not allowed to leave the country. And they are traumatized. They are completely in fear. They're scared. They look like ghosts after 14 days of war. So I can imagine how your life has changed. I also heard that farmers are supposed to deliver fuel and petrol to the army. So you actually are you're left with nothing. You just have to, as you said, you have to make sure your people are alive.
Yeah, I mean, we were prepared quite well for the planting season, which starts, depends on the region, beginning of March, a little bit later. So of course, my company has purchased enough fuel. So right now we have given that to the local defense people, or actually to the army. So we have right now nothing. at the same time, we have also given to the army or to the local defense organizations our cars, everything what we have had and could use actually for support we have given to them, and that's okay, I think, you know. Yeah, but the point is, if we turn back to the question which was raised by Oleg about the planting season, yeah, you know, right now is no one able to say will be Ukraine able to plant something or not. The inputs are available. So if we look at our inputs, they are available. So we have yesterday had the discussion with Ukrainian government about the inputs which are available for the planting season. So we are 100% secured with seed. That's not problem. We have almost fertilizers, and we make also in that dirty time, we make also dirty jugs, that we have enough Russian soldiers in our fields right now as fertilizers. Yeah, but Viola, we have on my fields close to Chernihiv, we have 600, between 600 and 700 Russian soldiers on the fields. We need to collect them after that. And we have rest of the bombs. So that means even if we have all the inputs, so I even forgot about the cultivation season on the north of Ukraine, because inputs, okay, if we have inputs, we need to go to the fields, we need to collect the direct people there, we need to collect the rest of the bombs, they are enough. So we cannot go just with the technical equipment to the fields without collect the rest of the bombs and the rest of the people. And then the mines. You know, yesterday before in the Chernihiv, one family was actually died because of the mines. The Russians, they leave mines right now. So one family, 2 kids completely died. So that means I will not allow to go to my fields, my people, without understanding what's going to happen with mines. So we need to send to the fields, actually, on not the fields, but to the roads which go to the fields. We need to send the special commanders which actually check everything in terms of miles. So there are a lot of issues. So I think we should forget about the season right now, especially in the North Ukraine, South Ukraine, in eastern part. So we can talk about 30% of land which can be probably cultivated, and most of them are Vinnytsia, Poltava, probably Cherkasy partly, and then west of Ukraine. Everything else you can probably think about that, probably will be possible, but no one can exactly say right now what's going to happen, or is it possible or not. I will not allow to go my people to that fields without checking and without any kind of approval of the authorities that they can easily work there.
Fully understood. Thank you so much for this very interesting and very scary inside information about how and under which conditions you have to live and work. Bettina, having a look on the international level, if Alex speaks about maybe only 30% of the agricultural land, or the potential agricultural land can be cultivated, and we see also maybe the sanctions on Russia and the restriction on the logistics, while the Black Sea is heavily affected, of course, by the sanctions, and also the Russian army, the Turkey restrictions, and so on. What does it mean in the short and the medium term forecast for the supply, and what does it mean for the most vulnerable states especially?
Yeah, I hope you can hear me, because it's a bit irritating. The picture just sticks. Okay, but I could hear you. Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting and of course sad as well to listen to Oleg and Alex, but yeah, maybe as well it's interesting to shift a bit the perspective. What could that mean for international markets? It's not so easy, of course, by now to really have a kind of sound assessment. However, there are some, let's say, rough assessment or pre-calculations calculating, like what Alex said, if the recent seeding season will be lost in the Ukraine, and one assesses, like, let's say 2/3 is lost, which would mean roughly 35 million tons of grains, which is then missing midterm on the markets. That could be, some say, 10 million tons of wheat and the rest to other grains. And then one could have an idea what that might mean if anything else, in the best case, will function like in the last years, meaning there will be a Russian harvest and that can be somehow exported, which is as well questionable. And maybe there I could add as well some experience. I had a lot of talks with actors from shipping lines here in the EU or in Germany. And one issue is the restrictions against Russia, plus, not to forget, against Belarus already since last summer on fertilizer, and that has not now extended even. So we have two different types of sanctions recently. As you know, against Russia, it's more the financial market ones, which have an impact. However, in principle, there could be some business or some exports possible, but the shipping line business actors, one issue is they feel completely insecure because of the business surrounding. They feel insecure because of the perceived danger in the Black Sea route. And another issue might be kind of prophylactic boycott. So even if they could buy from Russia still some cereals, they limit their activities, which might be a problem, because that means in the end cereal delivery is limited, and which is limited then as well to the most depending countries, which is especially in the Northern African region. So there we have very high import dependencies in the past, both on Ukrainian exports on cereals, especially wheat, but as well on Russia. So often it's read in the newspapers, Egypt with high degrees of, in some Ukrainian plus Russian imports around 80%. There are some, some positive news saying they still have own reserves, own stocks, so they could somehow handle the situation. So Egypt somehow handle the situation for the next 2 or 3 months. Then there's another country, Lebanon, and we all remember, I think it was last year, right? This large explosion in the port area, and there the whole warehouses had been destroyed. So actually, Lebanon is completely depending on a continuous inflow. So they hardly can stock something, and they just started yesterday to rationalize, so to limit the internal delivery of flour to the bakeries, because to limit, let's say, the consumption. So one have to have a close look. There are different situations how to compensate a short-term limitation now. However, there are large dependencies in these areas. And if you look at the price situation worldwide, there are some indicators one could look at now. So first is the market situation internationally had been already quite dense since the last past months. So we are now actually at the levels what the FAO already said a couple of years ago being historically high price levels, which was 2007 and 8 and 2011, the so-called agricultural price crisis. And we are now actually at the same price levels. Plus, additionally, which is even higher than at that time, is the prices of fertilizer. So that's a huge problem. And if you look at, I looked some statistics in Africa, you have a continuously growing demand on fertilizer, which is a growth rate of 4% each year in order to increase their own production. So there's a huge demand push actually, and it's now limited. So that will be really a relevant midterm issue to be settled. Another indicator we could look at is what is called the stock use ratio, which is kind of an indicator for financial markets and financial activities. And you have, like with all single indicators, to be careful with the interpretation. It means a bit, it is one figure to symbolize a bit how dense the market is. And in these agriculture price crisis, it was at 20%. And that means stock use ratio, 20% of, let's say, a year, what could be covered by these stocks, worldwide stocks of grain. I'm talking now about grain, 20%. And that means roughly something like 70 days, meaning if there's no additional production, one could satisfy the demand for 2 days. And now we are a bit higher still. So it's around 27%, which means 3 months without additional production. But the thing is, and that's why it's more important maybe for the financial sensibility, so for price volatility, it's not a kind of global reserve which is laying somewhere and you just could go there and pack some food or agriculture products, plus a huge bulk of this kind of oversupply compared to the consumption is linked to China. And it will be very relevant and important and challenging how China will now react, whether they will consume and buy on the world market. That will be a huge demand push and a price increasing push. So far, or in the past, they bought a lot of maize from the Ukraine for pig production, for the Chinese pig production. So that will be important. What is with China as actor? Another thing, what will be important for the future perspective or midterm perspective is, of course, other actors' reactions. So, and I know that Sebastian will comment on that as well. So what will the other large grain countries in the midterm, in the recent season, how can they react? Can they extend their production? A part maybe will be done by the price signaling per se, because it's getting attractive then economic wise to increase cereal production. But is that enough? Is that sufficient to fill the gap? That will be, of course, an important question, and as well a political reaction question. What we see already now, again and again, is export restrictions by a lot of actors meant for own supply security. And that is extremely counterproductive. That pushes prices. And even within the EU, I'm always really astonished. We had the situation with Corona, with medical masks, even in the internal market, member states started to restrict exports. And now we have the first signals as well by Hungary and Bulgaria to do the same. And that's really, as well as a political signal to other countries on the world market, a problem. don't do that. And in the historical price crisis, we had these efforts to build international coordination with a kind of monitoring system, the AMIS system, Agricultural Market Information System, which is a kind of information campaign to support and to convince countries not to restrict their exports. But that's a ruling problem under WTO rules, GATT Article 11. It's allowed without any type of criteria. If you do the opposite, if you do an import tariff, you have to somehow justify it with a kind of domestic market damage. It's not the case for export restrictions. You just can impose them. That's a problem, and you hardly can now change the WTO rules. Yeah, there's no strict actually enforceable ruling, but it's a problem. And we all the international community should do any effort to avoid these export restrictions. I stop here for the moment.
Thank you. We will come back to the entire question of export restrictions and so on in a minute, just to make sure, because we are public, there's nothing Chatham House rule. If that's okay for you, everything you have been saying, it is not for disclosure. So just because Hans-Jürgen Moritz asked in the chat, I think that's fine. If you want to have, let's say, you're not being quoted on one or the other paragraph or abstract, then please let us know. I welcome already and invite everyone to give us Q&As and also raise your hands in case you are interested to join the conversation, to join the debate. Feel free, because I see many of the colleagues which names are well known and who can, I know, contribute a lot to this debate as well. So now, Sebastian, we were speaking and criticizing the European Union a lot for the really poor, let's say, successes the last years in the common agriculture policy. Now, with the increase of nitrogen, of fertilizer, of inputs as such, is there an opportunity that the whole thing goes in a, let's so-called, better direction, while the price increase makes it maybe more competitive for ecologic organic farming extensification? Or is the pressure to increase grain and any kind of crop production so high that the European Commission will reshuffle the entire idea of set aside programs, biodiversity, and so on? What's your guess? How will this impact the general approach of the agriculture policy in the European Union?
Yeah, thank you, Viola. And also from my part, good evening. I mean, we have among us also a number of well-known experts. I also want to say hello to Alan Matthews and to Linde Götz. Both are really experts in the field, also Markus Mergenthaler. If you want to ask questions or contribute, I guess that the same webinar is not too big, so could be interesting. I thought I could do two things. The one thing is observe a bit or try to describe what is happening actually in Brussels. And this is critical because this is something where we do the same mistakes over and over again. We do those mistakes specifically in Germany because we do not discuss the right things, the appropriate measure, the efficient measures. And this is the thing we need to think about right now. I mean, we have a substantial lack in the world trade balance. Ukraine completely missing, Russia, there are many doubts. And it could be even that Putin is withdrawing quantities for strategic reasons. We don't know. So there is a lot we need to investigate. We need to gather information about this. However, the lacks are substantial. So the main task now, from my understanding, would be check the options which could help to fill this gap. That should be in the short run. It needs to be done in the short run. I mean, harvests are over the summer. And until the summer, we need to check which options do we have. We do not have too many. So this should be the task. What is happening in Brussels is a number of people say, yeah, we need to discuss, reopen the farm to fork strategy. Farm to fork strategy is a never implemented strategy paper. I mean, what's the point discussing that right now? I mean, you can discuss that, but that will not solve our supply problems, right? Short run, farm to fork is a long run strategy. So this is the mistake we are always doing, as in the COVID crisis, not daring to do risky harm decisions, which will hurt also people, which have substantial impacts, however, which are the right decisions. And this is the thing we need to focus on at the moment. Number of principles have been named. I mean, Bettina said, let markets open. I don't need to repeat that. The second thing is do things coordinated. There are a number of options we have, however, they need to be done at least at minimum in the EU. Better would be to coordinate with the US. The US are already preparing measures, so that is the good signal. And the other signal is, at least I perceive, many suggestions, options we have, many of them are difficult, because the problem is if a measure is really is feasible to, let's say, solve the problem, the state has to have legal options to regulate. It's the first thing. And the second thing is this measure should be done in a way that it is not, let's say, outpaced by other market measures. I will explain that in a minute, what that means. So what are the specific options we have at the moment, I see, and which we need to discuss? And I mean, if there are others around here, please add. I mean, we are also thinking how we can address the situation in summer. So the first option I see at the moment is stop blending mineral fuel with biodiesel, bioethanol. This is not a future technology. It does not solve our energy problem. It will make the quantity of mineral oil a bit shorter. However, in Germany, for instance, we do not have until now a velocity limit. We can still speed up until 160, 70, 80 on the right track, and nobody cares. And if we discuss on efficient measures, just do a velocity limit. It's not nice. However, it will save us a lot of energy. And then we do not have to do this stupid blending, which doesn't make sense. And we take for this blending 9% of the total plant production quantity for bioethanol. Part of that is Brazil, of course. We need to take this out of the equation. So we need to find out how much that is. However, the amounts are substantial. Half of the maize harvest in the US, for instance, 17% in France. Biodiesel is 5%, but still that is also something. We might have problems with deliveries from oils. I mean, Linda Götz has pointed that out this week. The Ukrainian sunflower and rapeseed to produce oil, we might have delivery problems there in the EU. So stop blending biodiesel to fuel. It doesn't make sense. And this is a feasible option, however, political, not for free. So car drivers might not like it. Second option, feedstuff. We've been discussing that a lot. I mean, we use a lot of feedstuff for our meat industry. The problem here is, from my perspective, I couldn't see so far an easy way to regulate from a lawmaker so that our Bundestag, our parliament decides something, and then we have put a limit, a break or whatever, and then we have more grains available. I do not see that so far. Quotas for animal production, difficult. It's a long run thing to establish. Meat tax could be, so meat is more expensive, people will consume less. We have a bit more grain available, however, we do not know how much and how sensible people are. There are these calculation of elasticities, of course, but it's something we need to check. I think here, let the market work simply. if feedstuff is more expensive, at least some producers will think, do I buy new piglets and start the production, a circle, or do I simply leave the stable open? So that could be something, some amounts to save. Number 3, and this is something which is quite controversial. I even have quite difficulties with that. It's the fallow land. We have the greening rules in the EU. This is about the fallow land is one of the options for the ecological focus area on arable land. It's about 2 million hectares in the EU. However, 1 million of that is in Spain. I'm not sure whether you can really solve the world food situation from the Spanish fallow land. I don't know, maybe someone knows that a bit better, can contribute. If you take at least a bit of that to produce, open that for production, and you should do that coordinated, and you need to do that extremely fast so that farmers can still do the summer seeding, which is right now, right? So something of next week, communicate that, could be one option. However, I will also point out on one problem. This is not for free. This is something which has ecological consequences. The fallow land is really important for biodiversity. So this is nothing we should easily do. We can do that as a temporary measure. However, we need to make sure that these fallow lands are very fastly re-established, because we need them in the agricultural landscape. They are also good for the climate balance of the agricultural sector. So this is something we need to check. It's not easy for me because I'm also doing a lot of research on the environment, and this was many times described as the winner option of the last CAP reform. So going on that hurts. However, I guess we will have to discuss that. This is still an option. Then you see unrealistic options. And this is the problem here again. I said farmers' lobbies ask to, let's say, revisit the farm to fork strategy. I've also seen a lot of comments, well, yeah, we cannot afford organic farming because they have lower yields. We should stop that. We should put mineral fertilizers on the organic land and pesticides and so on, and try to look for higher yield. Guys, this is not not thought at the very end. Many of the organic farmers, and this is not too much, it's 8% of the agricultural land in the EU. It's not much. It is on the locations which are not so productive, and most of the farmers, they know what they do. So they are not in favor of the conventional system. If you're forced to produce them conventionally, that will not work out. You put also in danger a functioning supply chain, which is also destabilizing the system. And the organic farming has one big advantage at the moment. They don't need mineral fertilizers. So we can expect very stable yields in the organic sector, whereas for the conventional, we do not know yet. So please do the right debates and think, what are the implications of such a suggestion? That doesn't make any sense. We need to diversify. That's the good thing. We need to learn from each other. Both agricultural systems have their pros and cons. However, what is done in the debate at the moment is really, we have the war in Ukraine, so we put into question what we have always criticized, right? And that is not the way. We need to think, what are the short-term options to really fill the gap on the world market? Okay, I hope that gives a first impression.
Very good. Some targeted measures without overthrowing everything what we had worked on. Yes, so I mean, Alex, you look very tired. I see that you have really, I mean, you live in a parallel world compared to our world here in Berlin, in Göttingen, in Rostock, or in Strasbourg. So maybe once again, going back to also the Chinese question, while I know that you had already you told us you have 120,000 hectares. This is a very large, let's say, enterprise. I mean, you do not just purely produce or have produced fodder for your animals. What else have you produced, and what kind of crops are mainly affected now by the war? Is it mainly sunflower and corn, or will it be also, I mean, grain? What's your assumption here?
Yeah, look, the Ukrainian agribusiness, as you know, covers roughly 42 million hectares of land. Industrially cultivated roughly 30 million hectares of land, of which between 7.5 and 8 million hectares usually are covered by the so-called winter crops. That means winter wheat, winter rye, and winter barley. So they are already sown. So that means right now is the time to fertilize and to use a kind of plant protection. So imagine if we do speak about the winter crops, especially winter wheat. Usually Ukraine, or last year, Ukraine has had the kind of average yields about 5 tons per hectare. So imagine, if we imagine 7 million hectares of land was multiplied by 5, so Ukraine will get, or could get, probably 35 million tons. Will Ukraine get 35 million tons? Not. Clear not. So that's the question, actually, what kind of average yields we will achieve that year. Especially, as you know, winter wheat is located mostly in South Ukraine and then East Ukraine. So my assumption is, but also North Ukraine, okay. So my assumption is, if we not use the fertilizers right now, and then obviously after that not care about the crops, so Ukraine will get probably 2 tons per hectare, or 2.5 tons per hectare, multiplied by 7, so 15, 17 million tons, will be actually enough to cover the Ukrainian domestic needs. That's okay. So that means about export, we should not even think. So another one issue is corn. Sebastian, I completely agree with Sebastian what he said. That's because I think it's another issue, but I think what the European ag policy misses is the flexibility, because there is not flexible enough and not prepared for the challenges regarding Fellowlands, etc., etc. So, but I mean, okay, turning back to Ukraine in the spring, usually corn, sunflowers, etc. So how many hectares will be right now cultivated and planted? Nobody knows. But definitely Ukraine will not get the harvest of corn, about 40 million tons like last year. That's clear. How many will be? 15, 20, I don't know. That depends on. So my assumption is that Ukraine will cover all the domestic needs for the food consumption in terms of grains and oilseeds, but I'm not sure about the export, especially in terms of wheat. I think Ukraine will be able to export corn, because we have even right now the stocks for corn. We have right now more than 3 million tons of plant oil consumed. I'm sorry, what is that? Yeah, Ukraine consumes not that much plant oil. So we have calculated today with the Ministry of Economy that we have right now, I think, 3.2 million tons of plant oil on the stocks. That would be enough more than for 6 years of domestic consumption in Ukraine. So that means Ukraine is able to export plant oil and corn. So the question is, to which countries export? Will be available infrastructure, logistic, etc. They are just open questions. But what Bettina said about the China, I mean, I don't know, have you seen, Bettina, 2 hours ago was a message that China lifted the restrictions on the Russian wheat. So that means China is ready to import Russian wheat without any kind of restrictions. And it's a completely different stuff.
And Russia, I mean, following the paper which Stefan has published on Monday, where he has had a footnote, it says that 60% of the grain stock is in the hand of China, where China is accounting for 19% of the world population, and nobody really knows what they have in mind with that. I mean, speaking about, I wouldn't say worst case scenario, but obviously there is a danger of that we are running into a global famine, or at least a huge, let's say, undernutrition for many countries. And Oleg, you have mentioned most of the countries in your publication recently. So what kind of mechanism could the World Food Program, the IFPRI, the FAO set up to make sure that those countries get a reassurance now that in 2, 3, 4 months, the population, which are mainly dependent on import of grain, are not suffering under high prices of grain, and they cannot afford more than 50-60% of their income to spend on food product on food. What should be done? What kind of mechanism would you see to put into place now?
Well, first of all, end the war. Okay, so the world has to get all the power at hand it has, a civilized world, I mean, to end the war, and this gives kind of a hope that this hunger that we have, also the hunger for these countries could not be realized. Okay, so that could moderate the current already expected decrease in the outputs and exports from Ukraine and from Russia. So I think this is really critical and the first on the list, I guess. And then other programs, I don't know, somebody already mentioned some food programs that UN already kind of running around, that could also help. I'm not sure though where the additional amounts of wheat and corn could be taken in the world in order to compensate the losses because of the war that we're running right now. Frankly speaking, I don't know. Sebastian mentioned that that there could be some additional amounts found in the world, but not sure whether we can find enough wheat and corn to compensate for the losses, because I mean back 5 or 7 years ago we were running a program like FP7 program with 17 other institutions across the Europe, where we also sort of were looking where the additional amount of grain could be taken in the world in order to feed growing population, growing world population. And frankly speaking, the Ukraine and Russia and probably Kazakhstan were kind of the only countries where there were gaps in productivity and a little bit of additional land that could be put into the production. So, but when it comes to other pieces, other places in the world, there will no such a kind of optimistic expectation. So this is I guess a problem. And I don't know. And what would be the other options? I mean, frankly speaking, I don't have other ideas so far, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, Sebastian spoke about let the market regulate that, but I think our production of pigs and poultry is really not sustainable, and it cannot be justified when you see. I mean, of course, you need different wheat to feed people than to feed animals and soya and so on. But I mean, it really needs a reshuffling of resources away from animal production, and especially poultry and pig, to human and to nutrition. Isn't that something which should be, I mean, on the agenda, priority on the agenda?
That might be, but this is I think this is kind of a medium or long-term strategy.
Yeah.
I mean, we will not be able to compensate, and we need kind of to think about the problem right now. It's what's going to happen, you know, in the near future. And in terms of long-term strategy, of course, I mean the shift to less feeding the animal and less putting this crops into fuel, that could be an option. I'm not sure whether this is really a short-term solution. And I was thinking primarily about the short-term solutions, right?
Okay. All right. There were two questions in the chat regarding a strategy for mineral fertilizer or I don't know, mature organic manure. I don't know whether somebody wants to pick that up and formulate an answer for this. Otherwise, is there anybody from the attendees who would like to jump and ask an oral question? Otherwise, oh, there's Linda. Okay, maybe Pia, could you? Yeah, there's Linda. Okay, here we go.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Great. Yeah, I would also like to come back to that issue, let the market work, which I also see in that situation a bit critical, because we need to react very fast. And in addition, I think the situation or what we see now in the population, there's a lot of goodwill to help people in Ukraine, and maybe we could also mobilize the goodwill to help securing food security in fall. So this is so then, and I think for that reason we could also mobilize some ideas or some strategies among farmers, and yeah, to build on that or to include that as well. In addition, not only like policies, like taxes, whatever, but in addition to see maybe there's a lot around with farmers as well, and they would be happy to help here as well.
Thank you so much. One of you keep this in mind. We have two more questions in the chat here. So maybe you could also follow up. One question was, what role could have alternative protein sources play? So I guess that is regarding soya production. And the other quite lengthy question and comment is, supply side policies can be expected to be very unspecific with regard to global food security impacts in the short run. At current input-output price relations, it's very technical, we should trust our farmers all over the world to make optimal production decisions. They will manage to make the best harvest possible. We should focus on the hungry in the net importing countries directly to show an access and purchasing power of the poor. Question: what policy options does Germany, the EU, have to be target specific at preventing hunger crisis in net food importing countries in the coming month? That was actually what I meant with my mechanism, but this is of course much more sophisticated, and it brings it more to the point. So we are at alternative protein. Linda's question regarding the big wave of solidarity. Can we use that from the farmer side, but also from the politician side? And the last question of net food importing countries in the coming month. So Sebastian first, and then maybe Bettina.
Yeah, first Linda's point, and I would partly agree. I mean, I said this, let the markets work. And this is the typical stuff, first of all, that we as ag economists base our assumption on. But I mean, Markus Mergenthaler's comment goes a bit into the same direction. What Linda says is also right. We should not expect the big solution from magic, right? This is, it can be, let's say, set of small quantities. And we need to look for the small quantities in the short term. None of these solutions will solve this by just one strike. They will we have to sum up, and then we might end up in a situation where we can fill the gap. So what was interesting, I mean, the alternative protein sources, this is in the debate for a long time. The problem is, if we feed animals, our normal meat production systems, they rely on soy feeding, because soy feeding is, well, animals like that a bit more. It's more digestible than.
Sorry that I interrupt you, but the question was actually meant in a different way. It was meant lab-grown insect proteins, just thinking out loudly. So also for human
sorry,
food production. I just want to mention that.
I was still in the Häusling meeting from yesterday. Sorry. Yeah. Alternative protein sources. I'm not an expert. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but I guess these things are important. There was one remark I still wanted to do, and this is also something where we should not. I mean, the question bringing in or closing this gap in a short run, we need to focus the debate on that. We still have to have one thing in mind, and this is also something which is important. I mean, Russia is in a war situation, and Putin is playing every card he can to set the Western countries on pressure. And let's say, being strategic also on this agricultural and food crisis issue can be a measure of this war strategy. And the problem is, we will not be able to win any war with agricultural policy. We can address this food shortage. However, in the long run, a lot depends on the question how the Western countries are behaving. So it is, again, we should stress the point, we need to support the Ukraine. It is really, really, really important, also from that perspective. So I still wanted to make the point. I mean, I'm not an expert in this, sorry, but we will not solve the war situation by just discussing agricultural policy. So here we need to focus on the quantities. Yeah, I don't know whether that makes sense, but it came to my mind from what Oleg said.
Bettina, maybe you jump in, and then I would open the microphone for Alan Matthew, who would like to make a comment on Sebastian's former remark.
Yes, as I'm very curious what Alan may comment, I will be short on the question of net food importing countries. Yeah, I mean, what is target specific? The World Food Programme calculates that because of the price push now, that will lead to additional costs for food aid. So for that aid, which is anyhow now already allocated to vulnerable countries, will be an additional $60 to $70 million per month. So that would mean an immediate green light out of, for instance, the G7 community to say, okay, we support these additional costs, 1 point. And as you know, Germany has the presidency of the G7 recently, and tomorrow there will be a specific agriculture summit linked to the current food security crisis due to the to the war against Ukraine. So that would be one immediate point. Another point is resulting from my debates with shipping lines and logistical people, figure out anything what is impossible now to support them who still are in the commercial relationship, so who in principle can traffic cereal exports from Russia till the moment there will be anyhow a kind of closure, maybe, because there's this general insecurity feeling. I don't know, there could be public premia for insurance systems, things like that, or white helmets, a company for the transport shipments. Maybe that could be a solution. And another thing is, we had in the past price crisis, we had already some initiatives which could be now strengthened by G7. For instance, 2008 in Aquila, Italy, presidency of, at that time, G8, including Russia still. There was the idea, together with the net food importing countries, to find a coordination mechanism between the agricultural producing, large producing countries, like G7 or 8, and with the demanding countries together to find concepts of regional reserves, for instance, Réseau Guest, that was a reserve system of the Western African countries. So these ideas which had started, but which actually never come to a good end, could be now stressed again under the German presidency of G7. And fertilizer, yes, fertilizer should be really a strategy. I mean, one really relevant issue is that this is a strategic resource. It was a bit out of maybe the political arena. The Commission always did a kind of critical raw material report where there was already always fertilizer inputs as a strategic component. However, it never entered really the very high priority level that fertilizer is a strategic input. So actually this awareness is relevant. That sounds now very academic, but I think in political strategy it's relevant, and it must be part of food aid as well, fertilizer aid. So another immediate answer. I stop here. Now it's for Ellen.
So, okay, the floor is yours, Ellen.
Thank you very much, Viola. I'm really so impressed by the personal stories of our Ukrainian colleagues, and I just feel very reluctant to get into the nitty-gritty of EU agricultural policies when you understand the situation that is facing folk in Ukraine. But I guess that's my expertise. So I was particularly struck by Sebastian's list of potential policy actions, and I just wanted to perhaps comment briefly on 3 of them. Biofuels, of course, in principle, you're absolutely right, Sebastian. In the US, by presidential order, I understand you could probably reduce or eliminate the biofuel mandate. I think it's much more difficult in the EU, and Viola probably would be able to comment on this, but here it's a legislative requirement. It would probably require a change in legislation, and that's a slow and cumbersome process in the EU. It's not something which would occur over the next 6 months, I think, but as I say, Viola probably could comment more on that. On the animal feed issue, I do agree with you. We should let market prices work, and providing support to pig producers, price support to pig producers, as is proposed by the Commission, is quite the wrong thing to do at the present time. Most of this is going to go to the very large producers because price support obviously benefits those with the largest output. So it's completely untargeted. It doesn't encourage adjustment. There's no conditionality attached to it. It really is the wrong thing to do. On Fellowland, I'm curious about the way Fellowland has become the issue here, because as you'll be very well aware, Sebastian, there are, I think it is 10 practices that farmers could choose between to fulfill their ecological focus area obligation. So Fellowland was just one, and so there's no obligation to set Fellowland aside. Farmers could choose. So I think it's more maybe the question that where they were using EFA area for nitrogenous crops, they're not allowed to use pesticides. And I think what I see from Comagri and others is that they want to remove that ban on the use of pesticides. I think that may be more the point. And again, I'm not sure that's going to be very effective for the reasons that you pointed out. But my main comment, to be quite honest, is that essentially, if we, for example, allow market prices to work, all of this implies higher food prices at a time when also households are facing higher energy prices. Now, Farm to Fork was predicated on higher food prices. It wasn't something that was highlighted or emphasized strongly by its proponents. And now we have higher food prices. And of course, governments are running scared. Now, we can say that the way to address this is, of course, to increase social transfers to low-income households. But actually, a lot of the people who are going to object to this are middle-income households. And the politics of addressing high food prices is, I think, is something which we really have to factor in the EU. Linda has commented on trying to build on the goodwill, and I just wonder whether trying to, whether it is a question of say rationing meat or something like that, to try and get home to people the importance of releasing these animal feed grains onto the world market, so that people who are much worse off than we are here in Europe can actually benefit. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thank you so much for this comment. I see nodding on Sebastian's side. Oleg, Sebastian, you want to go first, and then we do a tour, last remarks from everyone's side. I think that would be great. Sebastian, you go ahead first.
Thank you, Alan. I mean, this is quite helpful to think about. Just one remark: biofuel blending mandate is a national issue from Germany. So German Bundestag could just decide, from my perspective, as far as I know. Correct me, might be wrong. Fellowlands, you are right. I don't know whether we will save this gap. I mean, you could still allow Fellowlands to also open this for production. I mean, the USDA is discussing to open their conservation reserve program, which is a bit similar as far as I understand. So allow that for production. We have done that 2018 and 19, where we had the drought crisis in Germany, and there we were also opening fallow land. So it is flexible enough. We could do that. It's more the question, to what extent will that serve? And yeah, there, I guess that is more the limiting factor. So thanks. And the goodwill is also an interesting approach, because you can still reduce your heating was one recommendation. The second I would add, drive slower. And the third one, on one day in a week, eat less meat. And if everyone is doing that, again, small quantity. Thank you.
Not only on one day, okay, but Bettina or Oleg, maybe you go first and then Bettina.
So you mean concluding remarks, right, Viola?
Whatever you feel comfortable with. Make some final remarks. I think regarding Sebastian's requirement of EU blending, I'm not so sure. I thought it is an EU requirement, but I'm not so sure. But this should be suspended, at least if that's on the EU level. But Oleg, you go ahead and make your final.
My final remark would be like, friends, colleagues, please stand with Ukraine, because again, I totally agree with Sebastian. We will not solve current problem with the agricultural policy. This is really not about it. It's really about ending up the war and helping Ukraine to stand against Russia as much as possible, because this is not just about us. This is about Europe, US, and all civilized world. And the sooner we finish this war, and and Russia will be back to their borders till 2013, I mean, the better, I think. And then whatever happens afterwards, I don't know, but I think this is the critical point. And the support could be on various fronts, like we're doing right now. Then supporting scholars and students from Ukraine that flee the country, that supporting the the displaced persons, helping with the weapons, with the advice, with the technical advice. Please help Ukraine and stand with Ukraine. Thank you very much.
We surely will do, and I mean, we all quite engaged in trying to find even more support wherever we are. But that's very important that that you personally emphasize that. Bettina, and then Alex would be the last one to have the opportunity.
Yeah, okay. I don't have so much to add, so I'm very touched and very, how to say, happy is the wrong word. I'm touched to be in this discussion with the colleagues from the Ukraine. And yeah, Oleg, you said so. So the major important thing at any thinkable level is that the war stops, and as well for the security risks. What Germany could support now is first steps, G7 presidency, trying to coordinate what can be coordinated, which is first food aid, as well maybe support for the Ukraine food security. I mean, Alex said there may be not a quantity problem for the security, but maybe transfer logistics internally, of course, as well, to deliver food to the people. So to coordinate that under G7, to do maybe the thing G7 or 8 that days 2009 happened, invite the vulnerable countries. So what I said, Egypt and Lebanon, they have different needs now. So invite them, ask them, what do you need? Do that quickly now. That's something G7 could and should do. And yeah, and what we all could do, of course. I stopped eating meat quite a time ago, so and I will not start it now, so maybe that's a very small but small contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Bettina. Alex, your final appeal.
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, there are two issues. The first one is, of course, the war in Ukraine, and yeah, I mean, what can I say? Everybody hopes that will end soon, but unfortunately, I don't believe in the soon ending because of many reasons. The first reason is that if there are any mass media representatives here that should be off the record, I would say, because it's my personal opinion, it should be not published tomorrow in all the papers of the world, but I don't believe that we will get peace soon because of many reasons. And the first reason is that Mr. Zelensky, which everybody supports him in Ukraine, so I think he is currently getting like more than 90% of support in the country here. But it's also a problem for him because he has not had much opportunities actually to negotiate with Russia, because even more than 90% of the people strongly believe that we have to fight till they win. So we will not give up. And that, of course, reduces the negotiation basis for the president with Russia to find a compromise. So that means, yeah, that will be quite difficult right now to find a solution under such conditions where the Ukrainians are not giving up generally, and that means, yeah, that will be quite tough fight for the future. Yeah, that's the first thing. That means a lot of things will be changed in the future, and especially if we talk about there are a lot of Germans here, about the behavior of the Germans, especially the German policy makers. That's, you know, in Ukraine, we still remember the position of German government about the potential war in Ukraine and delivery of helmets to Ukrainian military services. We still remember that. Helmets and the hospital delivery. But then there was a quick change of the policy to say, okay, look, guys, it was a mistake. We've done a mistake, and we changed the policy right now to go further, and we deliver actually weapons, etc., etc. And it was good. And that's what I do feel right now, because of course I've got a lot of connections and people who I know in Germany, and that support what I get from Germany right now, it's unbelievable, just unbelievable. Because I get every day many calls and many messages and many emails. How can we support Ukraine? What can we do for the people there? What can we do in terms of humanitarian aid? What can we do in terms of food supply, etc., etc. So that's just unbelievable. And I'm really thankful to all German friends and the German people who support us right now. And it's a huge support, really. That's really what I do see right now. That's just unbelievable. And that's not because I know a lot of people in Germany. Everybody in Ukraine feels that, believe me. And I'm really thankful in the name of the Ukrainians for those supports you do for us, for the people who are living in the country and go to the European Union to find right now just a safe place, but also for those farmers which supporting Ukraine with necessary food, with necessary flour, I don't know, with everything, you know, that's really good. So that's the first issue. The second issue about the egg policy and the future. And that's actually based also on my first commitment about the changing of the German policy in general. And I think we should also think about that globally, because helmets delivered to Ukrainian military service was not enough. If the German government was thinking a little bit early how to solve Ukrainian military service, it would be probably a little bit different. And that's exactly what we have to think about the global food security, because I think it should be not too late. You know, I still remember the pictures from 2007 from Mexico, Egypt, where the people, hungry people, are running and fighting for food. That exactly pictures I don't want to see in 2022, but I will see them. All of us will see the pictures end of 2022, believe me. If I just think about only one country named Yemen. Yemen imports from Ukraine 58% of grains. Tomorrow, Yemen will not get 58% of grains from Ukraine. Who is going to replace that? Currently, the price for cereals is roughly $400. In the autumn, will be $600, $700. Who is going to pay that? There are a lot of open questions, really a lot. So I think we should be actually prepared for such discussions. What's going to happen actually with poorest countries in the world in autumn? And not only about the egg policy. And there are a lot of questions, and I do agree with Alan, but also with Sebastian. So we need to discuss it. We need to discuss it openly. And I think that should be not the discussions like helmets delivery to Ukrainian army from German government 2 months ago. Thank you very much.
Very strong message. Thank you so much, Alex, Oleg, Bettina, Sebastian. I think that was intense, and I share your view, Alex. It will take some time. I see there is no need, and there will be no political will from Putin's side to give in, to be ready for any serious negotiations. This is just PR. This is just masquerade. Has nothing to do with having an interest in any kind of a compromise and giving concessions to Ukraine. For him, this is still this level of capitulation or nothing. And I know we start now the political discussion, and I wish we could proceed with that, but I see that you are tired and you need a rest because your morning starts much earlier, and probably through the night there's bombing and shelling, and you get all the messages. I talked to your colleagues from the Ukrainian Rada last night, and I saw how much they are suffering under this war and how much they are traumatized already after 14 days. So I fully understand what is your life about and how much and how severe this is changed from 1 minute to the other. So I mean, I really wish you all the best, and I hope that we, with all our means, can contribute to that peace, what you are striving for, and what you deserve more than anybody else. You can imagine that we were not so happy with the long, let's say, and very lengthy debate about everything, and we are still now in debates on cutting off of Russian fossil fuel supplies. So you can believe me, we are pushing a lot, but so far it is extremely difficult. Our dependency on that stuff is so high that everyone who is in charge now is extremely afraid that this could deteriorate and could rather lead also to very high social unrest in parts of Germany. And that's why we have to figure out how to solve that. But this is not to be done in 1 or 2 weeks. And while the dependency was increasing and was organized by some of the politicians for years now, it is hard to turn it to the other side in a few days. But it is a big burden. It is really not. We all feel ashamed, believe me. So with that, I'm sorry with this rather pessimistic outlook, but thanks a lot for being with us. And thanks a lot for sharing all your insights. And as I said, I hope you stay safe. I hope you can manage the next days and weeks, and hopefully also your staff, your assistant, your tractorist, and all your workers stay alive. And at one point we will meet in the oblast of Sumy in a free and independent Ukraine, or Chernihiv. Thank you so much, Alexei, Oleg, Bettina, and
All the best.
Sebastian.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.